Look at it now, a pulsing cathedral of light, a monument that breathes with the heartbeat of over 100,000 souls. But before the glory, there was only this, a wasteland of ancient fire, a silent, desolate field of shadow and stone. In 1961, people didn't see a stadium here. They saw an impossible nightmare, a landscape of rock too hard to break, too vast to tame. You can still feel the spirit of the place, the tension between what the earth gave us and what humans dared to dream. They didn't just build a stadium here. They had to fight the very ground to make it exist. The challenge was biblical. 180,000 tons of basalt. That is what stood in the way of architectural immortality. This wasn't construction, it was an excavation of the soul. They had to carve the stadium out of the earth's own skin. Every inch of progress was earned in sweat and broken steel. The basalt was stubborn, but the vision of Pedro Ramirez Vasquez was stronger. It was brutal labor, a dance of men and machines against the remnants of a volcano that erupted 2,000 years ago. They were shaping a colossus, a structure that would eventually hold the weight of the world's greatest game within its stone ribs. Slowly, the shadows began to take form. The jagged edges of the wasteland were replaced by the clean, brutalist lines of a masterpiece. Imagine the ambition required to look at a mountain of lava and see the world's greatest stage. It was madness, scale, and pride. When the gates finally opened, the transformation was complete. The silence of the volcanic field was shattered forever by the sound of arrivals. They left the stone beneath the seats as a reminder that this place was born from fire and carved by hand. The Azteca does not just sit on the earth, it belongs to it. This is the miracle of the Pedregal. (1970). The world turns its eyes to Mexico City, where the air is thin, but the ambition is boundless. A new age of football is dawning. Under a blinding Mexican sun, the Estadio Azteca transforms into a temple. The heat is heavy, the altitude a challenge, but the stage is set for perfection. It is no longer just a stadium. It is the cathedral of football, a concrete giant vibrating with the energy of 100,000 souls waiting for magic. Enter the Giants, the 1970 Brazil squad. They didn't just play football, they danced with the ball, turning the pitch into an open-air gallery of art. This was the perfect tournament, a mythic display of skill where Pelé and his brothers redefined what the human body and a ball could achieve together. Every pass was a poem, every goal a symphony. The Mexican crowd, mesmerized, began to sing a song that would echo through the decades, Cielito Lindo. The song became the heartbeat of the Azteca, a bridge between the players and the people, fueled by the wonder of the beautiful game. Here, the game of the century unfolded. Italy and West Germany pushed beyond human limits, a brutal and beautiful gladiatorial struggle under the relentless sun. Then came the final stroke of genius, Carlos Alberto's thunderbolt, the culmination of the greatest team performance the world had ever witnessed. Brazil claims the Jules Rimet forever. The Azteca is now hallowed ground, the site where football reached its absolute sun-drenched zenith. But the echoes of 1970 were only the beginning. Just 1 year later, the Azteca would witness a record that history almost forgot to record, the 1971 Women's World Cup, an unofficial tournament that the world wasn't ready to acknowledge, but the people of Mexico couldn't ignore. For the final between Denmark and Mexico, a staggering 110,000 people filled these stands, a world record for women's sport. The atmosphere was electric, yet bittersweet. These women were pioneers, playing with a passion that rivaled the legends who stood there months before. Denmark took the trophy, but the victory belonged to the game itself. A moment of pure athletic triumph that was pushed into the shadows of history. For decades, this feat was neglected, a forgotten chapter in the Azteca's diary. But the spirits of those 110,000 fans never truly left the stadium. Today, we rediscover them. We recognize the pioneers of 1971 alongside the kings of 1970. Both are woven into the fabric of this concrete cathedral. The golden horizon remains. At the Azteca, football isn't just a sport. It's a legend, written in sunlight and shadows. The cathedral stands eternal. September 19th, 1985. A morning that began like any other, until the very foundations of Mexico City began to scream, tearing the earth apart in a violent convulsion. In minutes, the capital was a landscape of dust and despair. Thousands of lives were lost, buried under the weight of concrete and a shattered dream. The air was thick with the scent of pulverized stone and the echoes of distant sirens. To the world, it seemed Mexico had fallen. But beneath the rubble, a spirit remained unbroken. Hands reached through the dust to find other hands. Resilience wasn't just a word, it was survival. Amidst the ruins of the city, one colossus stood defiant. The Estadio Azteca, unmoved by the trembling earth, remained a silent sentinel of hope. It was as if the stadium itself refused to buckle, holding the weight of a nation's history until the people were ready to return. Less than a year later, the dust began to settle. The world arrived not to mourn, but to witness a resurrection through the beautiful game. 1986. The colors returned, vibrant and warm. The sun of Mexico shone upon a green grass stage that felt like a sanctuary from the sorrow. The crowds surged, a sea of sombreros and flags. They didn't just want football, they needed a reason to scream for joy again. June 22nd, the quarter-final, a match that would transcend sport, blending political tension with the arrival of a sporting deity, Diego Armando Maradona. He didn't just walk the pitch, he haunted it, a myth in a blue and white jersey, carrying the weight of a nation. Then came the 51st minute, a high ball, a leap into the sun, and a moment that defied the laws of physics and fairness. The hand of God struck. It was a heist in broad daylight, a divine cheekiness that left the world divided and the English stunned. Maradona would later call it a little with the head of Diego and a little with the hand of God. The theater was set, but God wasn't finished. 4 minutes later, the deity took the ball in his own half. The earth seemed to stop spinning as he began to run. 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders, ghosts in his wake. He wasn't running, he was dancing through a minefield, the ball glued to his soul. The keeper fell, the net bulged, and the goal of the century was born. A solitary soul had rewritten what was possible on a football pitch. The Azteca erupted. The roar was seismic, a vibration that finally replaced the memory of the earthquake with the thunder of triumph. Argentina would go on to lift the gold, but the victory belonged to the city that refused to die, and the man who became a god. 1986 wasn't just a tournament, it was a revelation. From the ashes of tragedy, Mexico found its voice, and football found its eternal king. For decades, the Estadio Azteca stood as a silent giant, watching the world change. Through the 90s and the new millennium, it wasn't just a pitch, it was Mexico's beating heart. Club America turned this concrete fortress into a temple of domestic dominance, where the yellow and blue flags danced in the shadow of giants who had come before. But the world outside was calling. The Azteca opened its gates to the icons of music, from the moonwalk of Michael Jackson to the towering stages of U2. It welcomed the gladiator clashes of the NFL, proving that its grass could hold the weight of any dream. Yet, as 30 years passed, the cracks began to show. The paint chipped, the sun bleached the seats, and the once modern infrastructure began to feel like a beautiful, aging archive of memories. Now, a new breath is being blown into its lungs. As the countdown to 2026 begins, the renovation efforts transform the aging giant into a modern marvel. The Azteca prepares to shatter records, becoming the first stadium in history to host 3 FIFA World Cup opening matches, a feat never before seen. It honors the ghosts of Pelé and Maradona while clearing a path for the legends of tomorrow. The weight of the past meets the speed of the future. Under the glow of a brand new red roof, history isn't just being remembered, it is being reborn. Modern HDR visuals bring every blade of grass to life. From the volcanic rocks of its birth to the high-tech marvel of its future, the story comes full circle. The legacy is eternal. The atmosphere swells, a bridge between generations who shared this same air. The stage is set for the greatest show on Earth once more. Some places host history. The Azteca creates it.